my last video, I had covered institutions related to disadvantaged groups. Continuing with the same thing in my second video, in this video that I'll be covering institutions related to transparency, accountability and corruption. The institutions which I've chosen are CBI, CVC, Lokpal and also CAG, and what are the news related to them I'll be introducing with when I pick up each topic separately. The issue which I've raised here is, are there any specific things one should keep in mind while solving test series papers? I'll be answering this question at the end once I finish the lecture. The subtopics are CBI, CVC, Lokpal and CAG. Why have I picked that up? We'll be discussing with each topic separately. First, hello everyone, welcome to Manifest IAS. You're watching Current Jots. This is Manjunath, Polity Faculty at Manifest. Current Jots is a current affairs initiative which we started on April 1st, and as part of this initiative we'll be covering all important current events that have transpired since June last year. We're not only giving free videos but also free PDFs of these videos are available for download. The links of the PDFs are posted in the comment and the description section. And for the time stamping of these videos, please see the description. Now, as part of this lecture series, in my last video, I had covered institutions related to disadvantaged groups. Continuing with the same thing in my second video, in this video that I'll be covering institutions related to transparency, accountability and corruption. The institutions which I've chosen are CBI, CVC, Lokpal and also CAG, and what are the news related to them I'll be introducing with when I pick up each topic separately. Before knowing the subtopics, the most unique component of this program is Strategy Talk, wherein we raise certain issues which boggle the minds of UPSC aspirants while preparation. And these are generic questions wherein we feel that this could apply to UPSC aspirants in general. In case you have any specific queries regarding your preparation, you can put these queries out in the comment section. Also, you can write to me for a customized reply. My mail ID is manjunath.manifestis@gmail.com. The issue which I've raised here is, are there any specific things one should keep in mind while solving test series papers? I'll be answering this question at the end once I finish the lecture. Now, moving to the subtopics. The subtopics are CBI, CVC, Lokpal and CAG. Why have I picked that up? We'll be discussing with each topic separately. First,
subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Is CBI. Now, with respect to CBI news, it is in news for both right and wrong reasons. For the wrong reasons, what are the wrong reasons or wrong news or the bad news about CBI is it has not been independent. There was a tussle and an altercation between the directors, special directors and other directors, CBI director, and also there was a clash between the center and the state, that is state government West Bengal, when there was a investigation. Hurdles were created by the West Bengal government. So that issue also becomes important. Third is the good news related to the right reasons for which it was in news was the establishment of centralized technology vertical. Now we'll look at this issue first, then we'll go on to other aspects of CBI. What is centralized technology vertical? It is a kind of system which has been established under CBI at a cost of 99 crore. And what is it meant for? It was to facilitate real-time information sharing with investigators across the country. Now, when I do internal security, you'll get to know that one of the problems of internal security in India is there is a lack of coordination among various investigative agencies. So in order to share information on a real-time basis, this particular system is being implemented. And what does it actually do? It has access to data warehouses, it is equipped with big data analytics, data mining tools, and it mainly deals with higher crimes like complex financial crimes, 2G scam, coal black, so such crimes could be tackled. And this was a proposal made long back in 2015 by CBI Director Anil Sinha. So now it will be functional by 2020. This is one point which you have to remember with respect to prelims. Now, CBI was in news for many reasons I told you. So you have to know certain static aspects of it. CBI is the premier investigation police agency, and when you say it's a police agency, it acts as the nodal body for coordination with international police, also Interpol, which I'll be coming back to again. Now you should also be knowing one point which I'm all time and again told is when you know an institution, you should also be knowing under which ministry does it function. So this functions under Ministry of Personnel, Pensions and Public Grievances. Originally it was established under Ministry of Home Affairs. Later on it was moved to this particular ministry. It was established in 1963. Historical details we look into. What is its major function? It looks at the higher crimes like it could be related to bribery, it could be related to corruption, it could be related to any other economic offense, or it could be related to any other crimes. And it functions then so when it functions under POCA, it functions under CVC. CVC is the regulating or the monitoring body which monitors CBI when it is investigating cases related to Corruption Act 1988 and Nodal Police Agency I already mentioned. Moving to the next idea, historical background. When was it established? It was established in 1963. Now, when it was established in 1963 through an executive resolution, Ministry of Home Affairs, even today it does not have a separate law for it. Later on, it was made part of a specific act called the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act 1946. So, it is today governed under CVC Act also because it is Prevention of Corruption Act also. It is also governed by Delhi Special Police Establishment Act 1946. Now, a few more points regarding what is Delhi Special Police Establishment. During World War II, SPE was constituted in 1941 and it had a separate act for it and it was given a statutory basis in 46. When CBI was established, it also functioned under center. There were two different bodies working differently, so this had to be brought under this particular act. So today as well it functions under this act. And with respect to crimes, what are the crimes and offenses it deals with? The cases which it handles are, it could be anti-corruption crimes, economic crimes, special crimes and suo motu crimes. Now here, one point that you have to remember is that what happens if the crime is related to a particular state government, it's a central agency. So with respect to the state government, this is in the context of West Bengal also, it cannot or it does not have the authority to take up a case in the state government without the prior permission of the state government. It is needed. Only in one case the permission is not needed, if the CBI authority has got the approval from state Supreme Court or High Court, then state government approval is not required. So these points you have to remember because this was in news recently. So this is the power and the cases which it deals with. Now let us look at the composition. When you look at the composition, CBI consists of many directors, and how are they appointed? They are appointed by the president, and the recommendation of the candidates is done by a committee called selection committee. It is headed by the prime minister. Then there is leader of opposition or now leader of single largest party. Then there is chief justice of India or chief Supreme Court judge. These are the three members. Home Minister sends a list of eligible candidates to DOPT, then it is approved by the president. This is how the entire system works. Now, but the selection committee have to remember more because there is a possibility of asking these questions because this was in news again related to the tussle between the special directors and other directors. Now, if you look at the entire act, you have seen that also one more point is security of the CBI is 2-year tenure. CBC Act 2003 talks about this. Now, when you look at all this, you see a huge lot of confusion and also many number of acts which govern CBI. There is Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, there is CVC Act which talks about its tenure, there is Lokpal Lok Act which talks about the appointment, then there are Supreme Court judgments. Vinit Narayan case is particularly important wherein it said that CVC is the nodal body, it comes under CBI comes under CVC. So when you look at, there is a lot of confusion and there is no single statutory framework which governs. Hence it has in de facto become a centralized agency, as agency under the center. So it is many a times criticized as a caged parrot. So the analysis is not so important with respect to means, but the points which I'm giving in the analysis, these acts, these could be separately asked. So these are the points you should be remembering with respect to CBI. One more issue with respect to CBI you have to remember is CBI code. So cases taken by CBI, investigated by CBI, there is a special code for it which deal with those specific cases to expedite those cases and look at, give the judgments expeditiously. Now, what is the CBI code? CBI code was also in news a year ago when CBI code passed postponement orders. What is a postponement order? These are orders given by the court to stop or prohibit all media from covering a particular case because it may feel that this is a high profile case, it might be sensationalized, it may obstruct the administration of justice. In that case, it passes postponement orders. It is usually the higher judiciary, High Court and Supreme Court, they have the powers to pass postponement orders. CBI Court in the recent Sohrabuddin issue and also when it passed postponement orders, that became a problem. And because it is in no guideline it is written that CBI courts have that authority. Although CBI court is in news because Ayodhya case, the Babri Masjid demolition case, is lying with the CBI court at present. So what is CBI court? A CBI court is a district court. It functions at the district level. It is a parallel court. It deals with CBI cases, but if you look at the gradation, it is the district court who occupy the positions there. It is the High Court judges, retired High Court judges, or judges, High Court judges sent on deputation for 3 years. So these are the points you should be remembering with respect to CBI Court. In any case, CBI Court decisions can further be challenged in High Court than Supreme Court. Moving to the next idea, Central Vigilance Commission. Central Vigilance Commission has been in news for one specific reason. There has been a body established. There is a board for bank frauds which has been constituted recently. That is why this body becomes important. Also, it is important in the context of Lokpal bill. Lokpal has been in news for a lot many reasons. Now, what is CVC? Central Vigilance Commission is the nodal authority for all cases which come under Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. Now, this body was established in 1964 under so there was a committee which gave the recommendation called Santhanam Committee. Originally, it was an executive body established through executive resolution. Later on, it is converted into a statutory body through CVC Act. Now, this Act I have already mentioned because this Act not only governs CVC, it governs even CBI as well, because it is this Act which gives the security of tenure, which says that CVC is the nodal authority, CBI has to function under it. Now, under which ministry does it function? It does not function under any ministry. It is not responsible to any ministry, because being a nodal body and being a body which looks into government related issues of corruption, it has to be independent. It is to not be answerable to any particular ministry. So it is an independent body which directly is responsible to the parliament. That much you have to remember. Now, what is the composition of this? It's a multi-member commission consisting of CVC and also two vigilance commissioners. And how are they appointed? They are appointed by the president with the recommendation of a selection committee consisting of PM, leader of opposition, and also the Prime Minister and Minister of Home Affairs and leader of opposition. This is the composition. The compositions are very important. These are highly likely because LOP is in also news, because LOP is not recognized in India. The controversy related to it I have already discussed when I was discussing Parliament. Next is, what is the term of office? 4 or 65 years. There it was 2 years for CBI director. Now CVC receives complaints in what are the, from where all does it may receive complaints from the central government, it may receive complaints from whistleblowers, because whistleblowers is a separate statutory provision today. There is Whistleblowers Act, and under which this body is made the nodal body. So whistleblowers can file their complaints, or they can bail the cat to this particular office, CVC, and it also is a nodal body with respect to Lokpal. It can order investigations to Lokpal. It can ask Lokpal to conduct certain investigation. Now, one thing which you have to remember is it is not an investigation agency in itself. It orders either CBI or if in case of ministries. So when you look at a ministry, ministries also have public servants, civil servants. And this is a coordination which occurs in a ministry. Now, every ministry has to have a civil vigilance officer. These vigilance officers conduct the investigation and then report to CVC. So ministries are inextricably linked with CVCs. This is how the entire process runs. So CVC is nodal body for the corruption related cases for public servants. Now, when this can occur through CBI, the complaints can occur through CBI, they can occur through Lokpal also, the complaint can occur through CVOs also, Central Vigilance Officers. Now, already I mentioned, it is Prevention of Corruption Act, the nodal authority, and all categories of most categories of public servants come under it. They give an annual report regarding how regarding any kind of systemic failures, etc., to control corruption. It also suggests certain improvement and preventive measures. There is one important case which I did mention in CBI, Vinit Naran cases. This case has been famous for criticism, for attracting criticism against Supreme Court. Supreme Court had given a particular particular writ called continuing mandamus. So under this, it could give orders or continuing orders to investigative agencies. That's why it was criticized. Okay, that point is slightly different, but here in this case, it is also known for the clearing the status of clearing its stand on the status of CBI and CBC. It says that CBC is the monitoring authority, it has a supervisory role, and it also upheld, the idea that, so whatever was there in Lokpal and Lokayukta Act already existed in CBC Act also. That is, the composition the selection committee to appoint CBI was already there in CBC Act 2003. That got its approval again in Lokpal Lokayukta Act. This was also upheld in the same case. In the same case, Supreme Court upheld the composition of LOP as well. Composition of selection committee as well. So with this, we have understood how CBC functions, etc. So when you see CBI, CBC, etc., all these are recommendatory bodies. They can only recommend or suggest punishments. They themselves cannot punish. So what is the news related to Central Vigilance Commission? The news related to Central Vigilance Commission is establishment of a board called Advisory Board for Banking Frauds. This is to be headed by former Vigilance Commissioner T.M. Basin. What is its function? Its function is to examine fraud of over 50 crore and recommend action. Now, originally, in its earlier avatar, it was originally called Advisory Board and Bank Commercial. Now the name has been changed. And what does it do? It works in consultation with the RBI, and in case there is any public sector bank and there are certain things which are not going right, particularly with respect to corruption or bank frauds, etc. And if the case is a high profile case, that is above 50 crore, then it comes to this particular board. So the 4-member board jurisdiction is confined to those cases involving officers of general manager and above only in public sector banks, and in respect of any allegation of a fraud which is above 40 crore only. So there is a limit, and in terms of, not only in terms of officers, there is a limit in terms of, there is a financial limit as well. And also CBI can refer any case or matter to this board, because this is valid under the CBC Act, because CBC Act is the nodal body for all corruption related cases. In case CBI, if the case comes to CBI, CBI can also refer. Now what is the action taken? This board takes up the case and it recommends or suggests measures. So then it is communicated to the PSB, and then the PSB takes action. This is how the functioning happens. With this, we have understood the second institution. Coming to the third institution, Lokpal has been in news for many reasons. One is there was a deliberate delay, inordinate delay in terms of appointment of the Lokpal office. That was one thing. Second thing was there was an issue related to declaration of public assets, which is a clause under Lokpal Act that we'll be discussing. Now, when you look at Lokpal originally was meant to be a constitutional body. There was 116th constitutional amendment which could not be passed. Later on, there was an act passed. Hence, it's a statutory body now. So Lokpal and Lokayukta Act 2013 implemented in 2014. So what does Lokpal and how is it different from others? Those all things we'll be looking into. Before that, what is the structure of Lokpal? Lokpal is a multi-member body which consists of 1 chairperson, 8 members, and out of 8 members, 4 are judicial and 4 are non-judicial members, and all should be having an impeccable integrity and minimum 25 years experience. And if you look at out of the 8 members, there is a clause mentioned that 50% should belong to SC, ST, OBCs, minorities and women. And the judicial members of Lokpal will be either a former judge of the Supreme Court or a former Chief Justice of High Court. This is the composition of members. Who can be the chairperson? The chairperson could be former CJI or former judge of Supreme Court or an eminent person with impeccable integrity. Now, moving to the non-judicial members. Now, non-judicial members, I told you, they should have impeccable integrity, the clause which I already mentioned in the last slide. And what is the term of chairman and members, it is 5 and 70. With respect to CVC, it was 4 or 65. CBI directors, it was 2 years. That was under CVC Act. Now, how are these appointed? These are appointed by the president. So there is a selection committee. Now, there is a difference with respect to the other organs. Here, there is selection committee also. There is a search committee also. Now, search committee will search and send the names. Selection committee will look at those names and recommend one of the names to the president. Also, in case the selection committee in case it rejects all, I mean, it may choose its own name. I mean, it may recommend its own name, disregarding the names given by the search committee. So selection committee can either take the names given by search committee, or it can recommend names on its own as well. Now, what is the selection committee composed of? It is headed by the Prime Minister, who is the chairperson. Then there is Speaker of Lok Sabha. Then there is Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, Chief Justice of India, or a judge nominated by him or her, and there is one eminent jurist who is appointed by the recommendation of the first three, that is Prime Minister, Speaker, and Leader of Opposition. Now, just remember the compositions accurately, because possibilities of confusion are huge, and possibilities of asking confusing questions are also huge in UPSC. The first is under CBI. If you remember, it is Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition is there. Then you have with respect to the CBC, Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, and also you have the Ministry of Home Affairs. There in CBI, it is Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, and there is a judge. Here the composition is slightly different, so make a chart and see the comparative perspective to have a clarity on this. Now, Lokpal Search Committee will be consisting of 8 members, and all these 8 members should have impeccable integrity in terms of, and 25 years experience in the field of transparency, accountability, etc. So 3 levels: President, Search Committee, Selection Committee. Next is the Search Committee. Now, how is this? Why was this body needed, and how is it different from others? If you look at CBC, it is only meant for public officers. Politicians do not come under it. And if you look at CBI is has a body with broader mandate, but there are many technical loopholes, or there are many. It's controlled. It's an organization directly controlled by the center. So to give an alternative, Lokpal can look into cases of almost all governmental offices. Either it could be public functionaries or it could be public servants. So when I say public functionaries, it means the politicians. It can go up to the Prime Minister as well. So even Prime Minister comes under it, and all public officials come under it. So also under the Act, public officials or public servants should declare their assets and liabilities. Now, more of this we'll be looking at in the further slides. What is this provision related to? Now, it includes everybody, is what I said. Now, what is the power it has? It has an inquiry wing of its own. So which has the powers of a civil court. It has the prosecution wing of its own. That is one. It has the power of confiscation of assets, etc. It has the power to recommend transfer and suspension of public servants. Lokpal has the power to give directions to prevent destruction of records. So in a sense, it is a more powerful body compared to CBC, because it can look into public functionaries also. Whereas, I mean, it is also a stronger body than CBI, because it has all these powers. And also CBI has to act under Lokpal. If Lokpal refers a case to CBI, the investigation officer in such a case cannot be transferred without the approval of Lokpal. So in a sense, Lokpal is a superior body compared to CBI. And if you look at the overall act, CBC is slightly higher than Lokpal as of today. Now, finally, what are the limitations? Can it look into everything? There are certain exceptions. PM cannot be, or the inquiry cannot be conducted against PM in cases of corruption related to international relations, security, public order, atomic energy, and space. And also, the Lokpal does not have jurisdiction over ministers and MPs in matter of anything said in the parliament. Also, constitutional officers like president and governor are also not included under this, because they are considered, the offices are considered sacrosanct. Any kind of allegations may bring disrepute, because they represent the idea of unity, and they represent the idea of India in total, particularly president. Now, coming to the point why Lokpal or Lokayukta was in news. First is all for the wrong reasons. First is, I did make a mention that there was an inordinate and a deliberate delay in terms of appointment of the office, and also recently the issue of disclosure of assets was in news. And under section 60 of the Act, there is a provision to make regulations for the conduction of the inquiry procedure, etc., that those regulations have not been framed, and also the process of constitution of inquiry wing has not been initiated. These were the reasons it was in news for. So now the most important aspect which has been making waves is the declaration of assets and liabilities of public servants. This was a clause originally present in 2013 Act. 2014 bill was proposed which wanted to make certain changes. It could not be passed. 2016 also there was one more bill which wanted to make a change that could also be not be passed due to some reasons. And recently there was a notification with respect to the declaration of assets procedure that we'll be looking into. What does declaration of assets clause say? Under the Lokpal Act, it is clearly said that all the public servants, which includes Prime Minister, Union Ministers, Member of Parliament, etc., and also particularly remember that it also includes PSU employees, trustees. More important, it also includes all NGOs as well. They should declare their assets and liabilities. And for NGOs, there is a monetary limit. Earlier, it was those NGOs which receive a foreign contribution above 10 lakh a year. Now it is it is set at 1 crore from 2016. So through the notification, it can be changed as well. So it now at present it is 1 crore. So all these have the responsibility to declare their assets and liabilities. And now with respect to the assets and liabilities of the officials, public servants in general, they should declare the assets of their, not only their assets and liabilities, but also spouse and dependent children. And such declaration should be filed by July 31st every year. And it should be published on the published on the website of the ministry by August 31st. This was the original provisions, and this was the original provisions. And in 2014 there was a bill which was passed to make the procedure even more detailed. It talked about what kind of assets. It talks about movable and immovable assets. So this was a 2014 bill, and it should also include debts and liabilities incurred directly or indirectly. So it gave a broader definition, or a complete or a detailed definition of what assets and liabilities constituted. But in 2016, slightly, the strength of the act was being compromised with a new amendments being proposed. Remember, 2014 was not passed. In 2016 amendment also, this is also not passed. Here the manner of declaration was suddenly removed. Spouses and dependent children was not needed. These were the amendments being proposed. This also has not been passed. Since there was a lot of confusion over what procedure etc. is to be followed, government recently was with the notification, has given a notification that till further notification, public servants need not give or did not declare their assets and liabilities. So by putting many technical holds, by giving a clarity on LOP, by not constituting inquiry, it is, somewhere the government is trying a silent burial or sabotaging the entire institution. With this, we have done the 3 institutions. The last is CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General. This was in news again for the wrong reasons. The retired CAG, Mr. Vinod Rai, was appointed as the chairman of Bank Board Bureau. Now, this is a violation of a constitutional principle which says under Article 148, it is clearly given appointment process and what are the conditions of appointment of CAG. It says that for the independence of CAG, certain conditions are given. It says that CAG is ineligible for any governmental office after appointment, after retirement. So this was a violation, and hence this body becomes important. Also, this body was in news for various reasons, like auditing functions. Its auditing functions have been expanding these days. So I'm taking up just one issue of this. Other things are clearly given in Lakshmikant. You can refer that. Earlier institutions which I did in detail are not particularly mentioned or given in detail in Lakshmikant, so I've gone into them in detail. Now, what are the conditions of independence? First thing, it's a constitutional body. So when you say something is a constitutional body, it is very difficult to change or the provisions, service conditions of that body or that particular office. Also, when you say something is a constitutional body, it has a higher authority compared to a statutory body. For example, CVC deals with public servants issues. UPSC also deals with public servants. But in case of a clash, it is UPSC which gets a priority because UPSC is a constitutional body. And one more condition for its independence is audits and accounts were in a single office earlier. Now it has been separated. Audit is done by some CAG. Accounting is done by Controller General of Accounts. Now, This is not, this is only at the center. At the state level, auditing and accounting are done by CAG only. And one of the criticism against CAG is that it is a unitary body in a federal system. I mean, because it is looking at auditing and auditing functions of both center and state. It is doing the auditing functions of both center and state. Next is, there is a security of tenure. You cannot change. When you say security of tenure, treated on par with the Supreme Court judge. Removal process is difficult, similar to Supreme Court judge. So there is a fixed service condition. And also the most important one, which was in news, is they are ineligible for any governmental office. So after retirement, so this is to preserve their independence. These are the points you should be remembering with respect to CAG. So we have done all the institutions with respect to transparency and accountability. Some more issues related to governance, etc., are left with respect to institutions. Those I'll be picking up as part of governance. Now, as part of this initiative, we also give you certain questions related to the topic so that you assess yourself as to how much of the video you have understood. So answer them, because it is very important, not just for yourself. It is also important for us to know how the videos are being received. Based on these responses, we'll also be we are also thinking of giving a full-fledged current affairs paper or a test, wherein, I mean, after finishing a sizable chunk of current affairs. So in this, I have attached 3 questions in the comment section. The first is related to CAG, and important thing which you have to note here is it's not here. So it might be a little tricky, or you might overlook the statements. So that is important. The second question is related to CVC, and the third question is related to Lokpal. Now, coming to the final part, that is strategy talk, wherein I raised the question that are there any specific things one should keep in mind while solving test papers? Yes, the answer is yes. There are certain very important things which you should be knowing before you jump to solving test series. First thing is, don't overdo test series, or when I say overdoing, meaning don't go for multiple number of institutions. I would recommend not more than 2, because going for more than 2 would somewhere harm the entire idea or central principle which underlines the benefits of solving a test paper. That is one thing. Second thing is, when you have done certain test papers, there is a method of solving test papers as well. One is, it is not really important as to how many questions or how many questions you're able to solve or how many marks you're getting. The point is, when you're solving them, solve them thoroughly, and not, I mean, take them as a reservoir of knowledge, wherein you just should not be worried about the answer. You should know the answer. Second thing is, you should know the entire synopsis or explanation. So your point is not just to get the answer. The entire logic driving that particular answer should be understood. Third is, also know why the other 3 options are incorrect. Research on the other 3 options as well, because no one knows what exactly or what kind of questions may come up in the exam. So knowing the other 3 options also become important. So there is a specific this is the specific method you have to follow. Do not consider or do not look at the do not worry about how many questions you've got right or wrong. It is about consider them as a knowledge building blocks, wherein you're reading your synopsis properly, researching on the other 3 options also properly, because the other 3 options may come up as a question in UPSC. Third thing is, so when you go for multiple number of test series, you won't be able to revise them properly. When you are not able to revise them, there is no use of solving test papers. So when you restrict it to 2, suppose any institute would give you some 25-30 papers. So in total, you'll be having some 60 papers. So within this 60 days or whatever days are left now, you could easily revise them twice. So revision is very important. Don't just do test papers once, revise them properly. At least 2 revisions is important, so that whatever you have read is well settled and well retained before the exam. And more importantly, I told you, when you are solving test papers, many people assess their performance and also assess whether they're going to clear the exam on the basis of the test papers they're being solved. This is a wrong method, because one thing is, it is not important it's not important to score marks in test series, because nobody knows what kind of questions are really going to crop up. And if you are motivated or demotivated with respect to the test papers, both are incorrect methods of incorrect strategies, because in case you're motivated, you become relaxed, you become laid back, and also you a kind of complacency sets in. And in case you are demotivated by just looking at your marks, that is also self-defeating, precisely because the questions which are there in UPSC will be fundamentally different. Only the essence of the spirit is similar between an institution and UPSC question paper. So do not at any point of time pass judgments or make judgments on what you have solved or what you are not able to solve. That does not give you a clear picture of whether you're going to clear or not. The point is, consider them as a knowledge reservoir and start building your knowledge from all the perspectives. That will be more helpful in UPSC exam. And finally, at the end, when the ultimate part of your preparation, the last leg of your preparation, shift from the test papers to UPSC papers, because test papers though whatever standard it could be of a higher standard or a lower standard, but UPSC standard is UPSC standard, precisely because I'm not saying it's a higher or a lower standard. They are different from what an institute, because the person who is framing those questions will be different, and any person in one question paper framed by one person, the other person will be completely different, because there is a certain amount of subjectivity which creeps in. So UPSC has its own uniqueness and its own subjectivity, which no institution can do it. It is neither feasible nor desirable. So in that case, when you are in the mode of institutions, when you are solving just institutions or institution related papers, there is slightly a danger of losing the UPSC mode. So in order to set yourself in that UPSC mode, putting yourself on the UPSC track, what you have to do is 15 days prior to your exam, you have to shift to UPSC papers, solve the previous papers. I have made a mention in one of the strategy videos, in polity strategy videos, that 2008 or 9 constitutes the demarcating year when the standard of UPSC changed, and that standard is continuing today. It would be helpful for you if you solve the test papers from then on. That's all for this video. Hope you like the video. Thank you. Have a great day.